Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, not what you don't.
Good morning.
Sorry about that cough. Start the morning off with a cough and a fresh cold one. But that is diet soft drink. Caffeine, that is. It's 4:44 a.m. on the eastern mid-Atlantic states, and that's where the show is coming to you live. Temperature outside our studios right now, we get an adjustment here, is 19 degrees. High of 36 with some snows expected. Low of 25 tonight. Looks like the weekend, if you're interested in
Weekend weather.
It's going to be pretty much in the mid-30s all weekend through Sunday, and 19 degrees both Saturday night and Sunday night. Next week, it's looking like we're going to get a thaw. So, anyway.
Here's what's happening.
So, the idea here of the title card, if that's what brought you into this show, you're listening to Tony Caravan Live, watching it worldwide, globally, with over 1 million viewers. Despite the view count you may see, this is the most popular morning show in the world. Today's theme is taking the pulse of America. And in order to do that, we're going to lower my chair. And I'm going to literally take my pulse, but obviously taking the pulse of America is figuratively taking the pulse of America. And so as this goes through this process, let's just think about some of our usual things.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
And don't forget, we're here every day.
Same time, same station.
Just bear with me, folks. We're live. I'll share this with you in a second. Wow. It's taking a while. All right. Let's take this up and put it in the camera. And let's see if I can get it out of the glare. It looks to me like 104 over 63 with a heart rate of 58. No irregular heartbeat. I used to always get an irregular heartbeat. Anyway, that's on the lower side of the blood pressure, but as I've said before and shown and demonstrated before, according to the chart, if you see the green zone there, see where it says ideal blood pressure, it's green. If you can't read it, that's what it is. So anywhere between 90 over 60 is ideal blood pressure. And 58, heart rate of 58 is not bad at all. That's like a good, decent heart rate. I've had that thing jump up into the hundreds, and I've had high blood pressure. I had extreme low blood pressure. All kinds of stuff like that. Okay, we got that over. Anyway, so
Let's get this show on the road.
So the idea here is taking the pulse of America. And I was wondering what I was going to talk about today, but it didn't take long. The moment I just opened up, the browser to go to YouTube. Excuse me while I take a drink. There, like I said, I started the show at 4:44. It's 4:48, so I guess I wasted about 4 minutes. That's not that much. Let's take a glimpse at the title card to see how it came in. Looks like the morning show made it, didn't get cut off at the end. That's an old graphic I've had since I was a kid. Probably got it out of a book at my father's print shop. Let's make ourselves a little comfortable here. Make sure our hair is not in the way. No, I was a redhead. Anyway, handkerchief. Don't know if that bothers anybody or not. And just to remind you once again, since I kind of rushed through that intro.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I didn't sleep the greatest last night, but I didn't sleep the worst. So, it's like that thing. It's like it's better than it's been, put it that way. But I just wanted to go. I'm going to give you an example, and we'll use this as a starting point. I'm opening up another browser. I did this the other day, and it didn't seem to mess too much with the live stream. Though right now, I have no concept of seeing myself. What I'm looking at is a screen. So what I'm going to do is I'll just give you a quick rundown of seeing what people are talking about in a general way, taking the pulse of America, and then we'll go off, from there. What are the loons talking about? The madmen. There's the typical politics as pop culture. People still talking about elections. Here's a representative from Congress saying it's only going to get worse. Here's some crazy radical fist in the air meme. Somebody asking what's your favorite Dr. Seuss book. I haven't been really following that too much, just loosely. I'm aware of it. Like I say, not having TV and not watching the news anymore. I'm aware of what goes on, but I don't delve into it. And that's how I came to this idea for today. Here's someone saying, I don't know, there's a picture of Mr. Peanut, so I don't know if he's on the chopping block too. There's a very weird photo of the White House staff, current White House staff, and they all are like folded arms. Folded arms means that you're, that's not, it's a confrontational thing, including the press secretary, and they all have these very like mean faces, and her face is like, put it, giving you the evil eye, as they call it. Just scan this briefly. These are things that you would all know. Pictures of immigrants with Biden let us in, and I guess compilations of Fauci. I think the latest one of that was that they're saying they want us to wear masks every year. So they're saying not only to wear like 2 masks until 2022, but now the idea is every flu season wear a mask. So what I guess the concept now is that everyone should wear a mask. Probably from whatever, October to March every year or something like that, or April. Give us the summer off. Okay, that's enough of that. Now let's look at another one. Not sure if I could be logged into this twice. People are talking about No Show Joe. This is this type of stuff that's on YouTube. Stadium announces anthem won't be played. Some guy saying ham radio's doomed. Deep fake videos are getting terrifyingly real. Monkey Paw Pelosi, not sure what that's about. And stuff about the plague. How to set up an animated lower third in OBS Studio. I don't have OBS Studio. Millennial Millie, she is a 2:00 show on some new station. Anyway, that's that. Okay, so I think we got a pretty good, pretty good overview of, took my personal pulse and we got a pretty good overview of the general pulse. So, as expected, the politics of pop culture is still ruling. Like I say, I took time away from, I closed my Facebook account, or tried to close my Facebook account, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I haven't intentionally logged in because people tell you it's like eternally, you're still there forever. Unless you go through some procedure, but then they still have, because of their terms of service or something, they still have all your photos and I don't know. But anyway, I've avoided that like the plague, so I have no idea what's going on Facebook. Twitter, I didn't cancel the account. I just stopped commenting or replying. The posts that I put as I ended that last month is I put a few posts to the live show here. Links just to draw some of my thousands of followers that I had, just to say, hey man, I'm out of here. You guys, if you want to follow me here. And I think a few people do. A few people from that have come over and watch this occasionally. But just glancing down through the feed, that's what I was doing. I went through YouTube and Twitter feed. I didn't go through like the basic let's do this just to get it, do the full thing. We'll go on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, here. Over at Zero Hedge. I wish I could show you this stuff, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm just going to give you an idea. Zero Hedge is talking about 10-year treasuries hit a stunning 2.5 or 4.25% in repo as yields blow out. Newsom urges double masking for all Californians. U.S. sends bombers from Norway in lower flyover Baltics. This is provocation of Russia for some reason. Russia again. Oh my God. Got to be kidding. The Cold War ended. It used to be called the Soviet Union, USSR. It's not. It's just Russia. It's just a country now, you goof. Majority of Brits say they will miss some of the aspects of lockdown. UK tax burden highest since the 60s. How democracy dies, big tech becomes big brother. Well, we know all about that. Towards $100 oil. So the oil companies are going to make a fortune on this. Though the American people are going to be like paying who knows what for gas by the summertime. And that idiot Drudge. U.S. COVID daily cases at 5-month low. Fed vows to pump more inflation fears, or pump more money as inflation fears take hold. Something about that Megan, whatever her name is, thinks she's a princess and she's just a B actress from a cable show. Anyway, so that's enough of that. I think we pretty much took the pulse of America all within less than 15 minutes. So you can see what I'm trying to get at here is that everything I read off is meaningless, right? It's pop culture. It's content for, as I say, for used car salesmen, which are the media, right? People selling cars, whether it's a newspaper or a television station, and has no consequence whatsoever on you or I, as long as we're not involved in that world. Now, if you're involved in that world, it's a different story. But if you're not involved in that world, none of this stuff matters. This is just all content for used car salesmen, to sell cars. We've got to move these refrigerators. We got to move these color TVs. I wonder if you get a copyright strike for just quoting a song. So, does it really sink in now? I mean, if you're one of those people who've been watching my morning shows for the past several weeks, and I mean, it's been a repetitive theme throughout that politics is pop culture, and this cult of personality, people hanging on to their candidates or their iconic figure, right? Whatever their, for whatever reason and whatever their ideology is, it doesn't really matter. It still is nothing to do with their lives. So here we have, so let's just like break it down bit by bit. I'll try to do this off the top of my head and see where we get with this. I've talked before about, right now, what I didn't notice in there is anything about that, the bill going through Congress, that, for some reason the House had to repass it, the bill they already passed like once or twice before, last year. I mean, this is that $1.9 trillion bill we're talking about. And so that's in the Senate. And the Senate apparently was in session yesterday, despite the fact that there was this alarmism about some kind of like, capital, craziness that was, there was just was fodder for the used car salesman on the network and cable TV stations. I didn't see a thing scanning through YouTube, Twitter, Drudge, or Zero Hedge, which is pretty much taking the pulse, of America. I would say that pretty much covers it, right? Zero Hedge is probably one of the best. That's more kind of right to center leaning places. Drudge is like he's moved to the tabloid sensational left, like agitation, whatever. And I think he's done it just for survival. All these people, most of these people are motivated by money. YouTube, of course, and Twitter is all about clickbait. I mean, YouTube mainly is about clickbait. And Twitter, of course, is, if you looked at the title card, that madman picture cut from, that's an old ancient printer's cut that I've been carrying around with me for 40 years. So I was, that sums up, that image sums up Twitter. I mean, the mentality on Twitter on both the left and the right. And everywhere in between, if there is an in between. I don't think there is an in between. People there are so extreme. That's why I just couldn't take it anymore. So I got out of it. But yeah, that's a good way. The reason first of all, like I said, I won't touch Facebook with a 10-foot pole because I don't want them like suddenly reactivating me somehow or whatever. But the thing about Twitter or Facebook is you have to keep in mind, Facebook still is the home of grandmothers looking at, and mothers and people sharing, mothers and lovers and people sharing pictures of their kids and, hey, look at the rest, look at the meal I had, and look at our vacation, look at Johnny walking, right? Businesses are on Facebook trying to, sell their wares, sell their used cars, right? And then I guess you have some influencers and a few other people, and I guess there's a few legitimate people trying to do a thing. I don't know if that's the cat or somebody trying to break in my house. No. But doesn't matter. I've got security. So, they're irrelevant already. I mean, I still don't see Facebook surviving in the long run. I just don't see that surviving in the long run. And Instagram, I have an Instagram account, which I mainly post things that have to do with my garden. Like I'm growing, various things. And I could even show you. I wish I could interface this interface with images. I'm trying to get my phone out. I have one of these cases. These cool cases you can get for your phones, where you can keep your credit cards and stuff like that in there. Cash. It's like a wallet, but it's, it's leather and all that stuff. Well, anyway, put in my password, go to camera, and I just want to give you an idea. So what I'm doing here, it changes the lighting. Like, it's interesting how that does that. Well, there you can see me growing a kale plant. It's always a little bit of show and tell to get this show started. This conflagration of growth, I guess maybe see if we can find some, but it must be a perfect medium where I can actually. This is like a bunch of crazy wild tomato plants growing in a closet in my back porch. Not sure exactly what that is. That might be another kale plant start. That, and I don't know why, you can't see the green. Let's see if I angle it. Anyway, that is, what's wrong with this thing? That's a basil plant, or basil, as they would say in the UK. Can you see that? Focus on there. Those are some cilantro, leggy cilantro, as we say in the business, and this is what they call cat grass. Cats go crazy over that. You just put these seeds in, it grows up within a week. You just break off the top of it. The only problem with it, even though they call it grass, and this is funniest thing of all, this is snow. This is like only about a week and a half, maybe 10 days ago or so. That's what it looked like outside my front door, or in my neighbor, down the street from me, basically. And when I say there's trucks, there's like some big coal truck or whatever the heck it is, barrel-assing down my street. That's the mornings here. And of course, on my street, there's a classic building. That building's down the street from me. No wonder I only pay $200 a month for mortgage, taxes, and insurance. No. They've been wrecking buildings like that. Most of the streets in pretty decent shape. Anyway. And here's the other side of what my getup looks like. There's my mixer and a speaker. And that ought to do that. Why did I bring that up? Why did we do that show and tell? That's the question.
Good morning.
Well, what I was trying to get at is that I deal with, as the weather gets warmer, and I'm all for global warming. I want it to be, I'd like the world to be like a degree or two Celsius warmer. Ain't going to happen. We're getting colder. See, people like me who grow things, It was a good point of departure. I will be, as the weather gets nicer, I'm going to try to do this show from out back in my yard and take you through the process of growing food and that kind of self-sufficiency stuff that I go through. And we'll still deal with some of our usual topics. And I'm sure if I have drinking caffeine by that time, hopefully not. We'll still bring out the white handkerchief or the red handkerchief to deal with carbonation and soda on the mustache. But I'm going to show you how I live, how I live, in a house that I'm only paying $200 a month for, and I only have, I don't know how many years to go on this, 7 or 8 years, and it's paid off, So, and after that point, the price goes down. I'll still have to pay taxes and insurance. But remember, those combined are less than $200. My biggest expense is water and sewer. And I just wish I had a bigger piece of land, because if my land, I don't have big enough space of land to put in a septic system. Because if I did, I'd just get out of that sewer altogether. And I'm not one of these people to do this composting thing, and they probably wouldn't let me, because if I tried to cancel my sewer service, there would probably be some stink about it, and I'd say, well, I'm just going to use a composting toilet, and they'd say, oh, that's illegal or something like that. See, there's a lot of laws on the books that you don't know about. Following up on the other too many secrets thing, because there are so many secrets that you only realize that it's secret until if you happen to go try to open that door. You ever think about that? And because they're obviously constantly passing things. When they do these bills, like in the House, there's some of these things, they're like, I'm trying to show you with my hands, but it's like bigger than the screen. I mean, some of these things, they give examples of them sometimes. They're like from the floor, they're as tall as a person. Or if it's on a desk, it goes this high from the desktop. And you're saying it's HR, whatever it is, and it supposedly has a very simple title, like it just supposed to do a thing. Well, how do you end up having 1,200 pages or 6,000 pages to pass a bill that is supposedly to repair a bridge or do something, or whatever. Well, the thing is, they put in all of these various amendments, and that's what they used to call pork. You don't hear people use that term anymore. But what happens is every representative has a district, obviously. And so each one of them, or most of them, and I guess they, this goes through the party, the structure, because it's even while Congress is meaningless, I mean, this is how we got to where we are now. Okay, that's what I'm trying to get at. That there are systems and bureaucracies even within the political structure the way it was itself. So it's just like the DNC or the GOP or whatever. They have committees and a hierarchy, and they create, these lists and, and things and figure out. So I'm sure there was some system in the House, that says, say, a representative from Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and such, you're, on this next bill, you can put in your local pork, And then on this bill, somebody from Iowa, Wisconsin and Illinois, and some other states, you could add your pork amendments or things in that particular bill. And that's how these bills just bloat. And it has nothing to do with it. And in some cases, those particular pork things are just one page. And sometimes they throw these things at the body, the entire House of Representatives, with very little time for them to read. And a lot of these things are thrown in at the last minute. Just like the lobbyists will put in a thing, right? That has something to do with something. The cat's doing is scratching again. The litter box, just in time. And that's politics. That's how the game is played. And like I said, I lived and worked in Capitol Hill. I know how that stuff goes. I've seen all that stuff firsthand, right? And so the idea is, and it was pork, and it used to be the media used to really get on their case about that stuff. I used to get copies of the Congressional Record, because it used to be able to get it for free. I don't know if you can do that anymore. Because it was like somehow it was the right of each citizen to get a copy, literally a copy of the Congressional Record. And it started to pile up so much because I was there, because there's so much that I had to stop it. I mean, it was just taking up too much space. It would, it'd be like subscribing to some daily newspaper and you just couldn't keep up reading it. But it was worse than that. And so they put in all these things and you have no idea what they are. And, it may be for some very small town in some weird place that the average American doesn't even know exists. But a representative puts that in there because in that little area, that little district, congressional district, that's something that will make the newspaper in his or her small town, and that will be something that he could put in his campaign to get reelected when he's running for reelection. And it might be something like I say, like doing some little project, a couple $1 million towards a thing there, but it did something. But it came out of, the general fund, taxpayer fund, and all that stuff. And it's the same with the special interest, the lobbyists, which are now the corporatocracy, that they'll throw in something there that will give them a legal protection from lawsuits, an ability to do something that they, import a thing or do some kind of nefarious activity, legalize that or allow them to do this thing. And that stuff stays completely under the radar. See, and the whole idea of the media, they used to call it the fourth estate, was the idea is, you would have somebody somebody in your newsroom, that would be like the congressional desk or something like that, who would be going through the congressional records, right? And would be looking for this kind of stuff and basically reporting, right? Because they were remember the word reporter? Lois Lane was a reporter. Jimmy Olsen was a reporter, right? They're not reporters anymore. No, they're just like talking heads. They're used car salesmen. That's what they are, right? Using politics for content. It's pop culture. And, in the absence of that, of the people looking, and sifting through the congressional records, that's how we got to the place where we are now. So in effect, the media was the instrument that brought down the U.S., that brought down America. And, there's people still in denial. And that's what I'm saying is take the pulse of the nation, pulse of America, what's left of America, you see that America is greatly divided, is not just split on party lines, is not just split on ideological lines. America is split on each one of those things. It's like a flowchart. And so you may have the ideologies, the red and blue state, things at the top, and then there's lines. Everyone's seen a flow chart like that. And then you've got these two lines coming down, and then under that is a row and a line, and under those are little boxes. And then under those boxes, they branch off into other boxes. You know what I'm talking about. And that's how division is in this country. And that's why when I say we have irreconcilable differences, just like, one of the reasons people get divorced, irreconcilable differences that cannot be mended, cannot be cured, can't be fixed. There's no coming together. There's no reuniting. I had an uncle who, managed, he's no longer with us. I was just petting my cat, just passed by. You want to come up and say hi to the world, to our 1 million plus listeners worldwide? Huh? You want to? Nope. When I owned for a short period of time, I told this story a long time ago. I lease purchased an old hotel that had a bar in it many years ago when I was very young, college aged, right out of college. And I was going to remodel the place, and it was a lease purchase. So basically my lease was being applied to the purchase. The whole cost of the place was like $90,000. It's hard to believe. It was a corner hotel for like 3 stories tall, made of brick with marble terrazzo floors and stuff like that. It was a sound, solid building. But I had this bar in it. And of course, like I said, I was just right out of college. And I got it up to code, got the approval by labor and industry. People who don't know that, or people who know that that's not easy to do. But anyway, because it had sat empty for a long time. So I got labor and industry to approve it, the liquor control board to approve opening of the bar, blah, blah, blah. And it was pretty much an overnight sensation. It was great. It was an overnight sensation. It was just another one of those things. That's how I knew I was capable of doing these things, of turning things around. I learned all these tricks. But my uncle was at the other end of the street, and this was on the main street in my hometown. On the other end of the street, there was a club called the Moose. We used to have a lot of clubs, social clubs in America. And that club was the Moose, and that was in a big, giant old building. And it must have been not too much different than the city that I'm living on the outskirts of now, which is far from where I was born. But much similar to it, this was a big former industrial town, which the population was, I don't know, 4 or 5 times higher than it is now. And it was the same in the place where I grew up. That was a coal town. That in the heyday of this country, was like a swinging place. The population was, I don't know, probably 5 times more than it was from when I'm telling this story. So they had all these social clubs, and this was this huge place. You could imagine from some like old movie, some ballroom. Like you walked in, you had to get to the bar. The bar, you had to walk through this big open like ballroom, and there were no lights on or anything. And it was just at the very end was this bar, and my uncle used to be there. And I remember one time I ran out of, it was late at night, and I ran out of like a couple. Somebody in there was drinking a lot of, I don't know what it was, scotch, or I don't know what it was. Something was going really fast. So I went down there and said, "Hey, can I borrow?" Because I know they never were busy. It was just a bunch of old guys just sitting at the bar. I said, "Hey, could you give me a couple bottles of whatever it was, scotch or and I'll return them. When I'll just return the bottles for you. Like bring them back, get them at the liquor store tomorrow, and I'll just replace them for you." He said, "Sure, no problem." But he used to say, "This is a fun. There's no reason. This story is like." So they have, there was wine, and I'm talking about the United States and about that there's no hope to reunite the United States. Well, anyway, there used to be a wine, and probably still is. It was but they had a ton of commercials, and it used to be called Reuniti, right? So that's how it was, believe it was pronounced, Reuniti. Reuniti on ice, right? Well, he used to call it literally reunite. the girls, the young girls, they like that reunite. The old guys, man. I miss that. That's like that's like 40 years ago. Old timers, the people that built America, yeah. But anyway, there's not going to be you're not going to reunite a country that's as divided as this one is, because it's divided on so many different levels and in so many different ways. And if you look at that title card again, you'll see that people have just gone stark raving mad. I mean, people on Twitter have always seemed to have been stark raving mad. And, even though there's this constant purging, excuse me. It's like 5:30 in the morning. I'm drinking a carbonated beverage. What do you expect, man? Give me a break. The most popular show on TV in the morning. With all my swag in sight, I've got to do something. I've got to change this background. This is, this dark area here is actually like acoustical foam. So you can't even tell that now in this lighting here. I have to get the on-air sign lit up, and I'm going to have to do some other stuff here. Maybe at the same time when I eventually figure out how to get this. I keep thinking and hoping that somebody at YouTube who's like wasting time making sure I'm politically correct, will actually take the time to listen to me and will actually figure out a way to fix this interface so that they add a little button, so to speak, that says insert picture in picture, insert image. Simple as that. PIP image, something weird like that. And it can be very simplistic. So all it really does is, insert whatever, like I was showing you before. All it would do is if you clicked it, it would pull up your, a selection, an area where a selection, and right here it would do this. So the screen would be split in half and there'd be an image there. And then you click it again and the image would vanish. Now, how hard is that from a code writing standpoint. You know, it's funny. And the moment I did that, you see how my face lit up? The YouTube, my mail thing just popped up. And oddly enough, the YouTube thing is was the first email thing there. So it's almost like, you know, they're messing with me, right? I mean, we have this. Do you remember under the Bush administration, if you're not old enough to remember that, he tried to create the Office of Total Information Awareness. And when it came out, I don't know. I don't think I have $1 or anything laying around here. On the other side of the room, I do, but I'm not. Actually, I'm going to get it just because, you know, just because I want to make the point. I'm live. Where's the show going? Be right back. How's that little baby kitty? How's that little baby kitty? And he's back. And yes, I need the headphones because if I don't have the headphones on, I can't.
Here's what's happening.
I can't hear that stuff or myself. Like, I don't know if I'm over modulating. You know what that means? All right. So the classic all-seeing eye, right? On the back of like a $1 bill. Boy, this thing has a hard time focusing. And so they had something like that. It was like a rounded logo. And I think it was similar to that. And it was like the Office of Total Information Awareness with an all-seeing eye. And oddly enough, you know, at the time, the media jumped on that, you know. And so they, you know, it was like stopped, like, you know, that disappeared and vanished. And of course, they went underground and did it anyway. They just changed it. And they obviously still have it. That's when I say, you know, that's like the government's version of big data, you know. It's like the NSA has been tapped into. Like, they used to have these transatlantic, they still have them. But I mean, I have no concept of the status of them or if they're maintained, but they probably are. But the transatlantic cables. Now you think about that project, you know, once the phone communication system, you know, came into being, you know, it was a wired system. So people under a certain age have no idea of the concept of a wired phone. Most people don't even have what they call a terrestrial, you know, phone, you know, in their house, a telephone. You know, do I have one laying around here? I did. What do I do with it? What do I do with that thing? Where's my It's a phone. Hello. Show and tell. I have 157 Live. It used to be a magazine I had. But look at that's a telephone. This thing is about 60 years old. All right. Now, this was a color version. I have a standard black one somewhere. That's like what you got if you didn't pay. But you could pay extra to get a color one, you know, color coordinated with your house. And you notice that color green, you'll see in old like 70s, 60s or 70s places. You know, when they got away, the first refrigerators were just generic white things with this weird handle, and the ice box in the middle. I had an apartment, about 25, 30 years ago where that was in there. There was one in there that was still working, and it was from like the 60s. And it kept, the only mainly stuff I kept in it was like beer and cheese and stuff like that. Because I was pretty much used to drink all the time. I was a boozer, hardworking. I used to worked hard, drank, partied hard type of guy, but always got my work done. Always got my work done. Was always at work before the, first guy at work, always had my pile of job jackets, whatever I had to do. Always got that stuff done, and then I'd go out, go out to the bars and have some drinks after, the Mad Men era, from a different concept of Mad Men, the AMC television show Mad Men, the advertising thing. That's the kind of guy I was. That's the way it was. You came out with, the creative minds came out with these great campaigns. It was a success. You worked hard, and you partied hard. That's just the way it was. And it was a part of the culture back then. Those days are gone. Now people are either just drunks or they don't want to work. Or, they're protesting against something. And like I say, my answer to protesting is, then what? We want this, we want that. Then what? And then you're going to come up with something else new, right? Never enough. I've talked about several weeks ago, I was helping someone who had a business who was on vacation and wanted someone to take the cash from his register and prepare his daily deposits for about a week or so while he was out on vacation. Because he had employees, but he didn't really have he had no assistant manager or something. He basically runs his business himself. And so I'd have to go down there every day and basically count the cash, balance the register, prepare the deposit, that sort of thing. Well, anyway, that it was a royal pain, having to do all that. But I did it. He's a friend of mine, and he's back now. I was talking to him the other day, and he has a successful business. But it's all him, and what we were talking about, and this ties into, taking the pulse of America, because it's a small business, He can't find employees. He can't find people that want to work. And he's stuck with like some older guys, and people that just don't have that spirit, right? They don't get into it. Like, in other words, if you can't like turn your work into fun, it's like that movie, The Office, as ridiculous it is, and the idiot boss and all that stuff and everything about it, you still have that group, where there's a couple of people in every business where you make friends. They're, the worker friends, co-worker friends. And like in that movie, they have they'll get together and have a party, or something like that. And, all the jobs I always had were like that. Even when I was the boss, I was always a party thrower type of guy anyway. So I always had parties. So at the very least, you're going to get around Christmas time, you're going to get a party from me. And, and there's going to be something else, going on, but you would have. I don't do that stuff anymore. Now I'm just the number one vlogger on the internet worldwide, globally. And my numbers only show up in Europe and around the world. They choke me in the US. It's the truth, man. It's the #1 show. So that, when you take the pulse of America, you could talk to, and I have relatives and other people I know that I've talked to on the phone that have businesses, and it's always the same thing. They can't find good employees. And I'm not talking about, this has nothing to do with being like overly qualified or like looking for super employees, right? This isn't like the, where the super soldier type of thing. No, this is just people that do the job. Right. And then when you get people, in there, they just don't have any spark. Like they're just there, for the paycheck. And so they just want to, they don't have any interest in it. And so it doesn't matter whether you're making a pizza or a sub, right? That just has to have that right combination of whatever it is, oregano and oil and provolone cheese, or, whatever, onions or no onions, or, the right meat or something, or that pizza with just the right amount of cheese, melted just the right way with the toppings, whatever. It's that interest in the quality of the product that you produce, which is a very easy thing for someone to master, that helps the business grow, and and for some, it gives you a certain pride in your ability to do it. It doesn't matter what you're doing, anything like that. It's like, even if you just work in a store or an office, it's the idea of doing your job efficiently and effectively, and and having it set up so that the business flourishes and you flourish. It's not the idea is, okay, you go into work, you see these people, and they're like kids. They walk in and look, I got up. It's 5:41 in the morning. I started the show an hour ago. I mean, who the heck's up at this time? And I'm up. I mean, I'm drinking my caffeine drink and, doing my little goofiness. But, I'm not, I'm awake. I'm lively. It's like, you got to take whatever you do seriously, even if it's something like this that I don't get paid for. I'm not monetized. I wish people would buy some of my swag, my book, my shirt and stuff, but they don't, and they won't, but I'm doing it anyway. Cause I don't, this is what I do, I'm doing it because, like I say, if there's one person, or 7 people that can benefit from this, then I've succeeded. Then it's worthwhile. And if not, at least I'm trying. At least I'm one guy trying to inform people and let people know, to get the truth out there to people. Well, most people just don't want to take the effort with their job, or in life, in their relationships. They take their spouses or their friends for granted, their family members. And so all this has to do with taking the pulse of America. Because when you look around, what do we see? We see most older Americans are warehoused in either nursing homes or some sort of long-term care facility. And if not there, in their, if they're fortunate enough to be still in their own house or apartment or something like that, maybe visited once a week or something like that, as if they're warehoused, as if they're, the wisest, the most experienced people in our society are ignored. Right? Well, that's not the way it was. When I grew up, our grandparents, Yeah, we visited them. We had Sunday dinner with them. There were constantly, every holiday that you could imagine, there were family get-togethers, and they were always present. You listened to their stories, they gave you advice. I could still remember advice I got from my grandfather when I was in grade school. Could still hear him saying some things that stuck with me my whole life. And so, people just don't, we don't respect our elders, put it that way. And that was another sign of the downfall of Western civilization, and pretty much more so in America than even in Europe, where we just lost respect for our elders. And it's not 100% blame on the young generation, because in many cases there was that move by the boomers, or whatever, the older ones, who all basically kind of made their money. They started as the 30 somethings, the hippies that became yuppies, right? And then there was a show 30 something, and they all had these jobs now, so they were no longer hippies. Then they made their money, and then Wall Street world came in, and the high finance and all that stuff. And then they had all this money, and then they moved to these southern places, and and they basically live their life instead of so they broke free too. A lot of families just kind of spread out, instead of at one point people more or less stayed in the same area. And that was one part of the downfall of America, when that started to happen. But that was a curable thing, because it was easily curable. But nonetheless, it still added to it. But we definitely don't respect our elders anymore, and we warehouse people. And it seems as of late, what's going on, people have no respect for children. Children are just thrown into daycare, literally as infants. Infant daycare. A woman gets maternity leave, and then the child's like thrown into some kind of daycare. And so a child is basically raised by these bureaucrats, more or less, from infancy, and then it's the school system. And so the concept of, so children aren't brought up in a family. And so they know, they spend more time. In other words, they spend more time with other people than with their blood relatives. And so think about that. So we throw our children off, to the state, right? Because that's what it is. And we throw our parents or grandparents off to the state, basically, or to some the corporatocracy, which is the state now. And even the daycare is really the state. A lot of these are privately owned corporate. These are for-profit corporations, these daycare centers. So, I mean, unless you're like extremely poor or on welfare, that's, that is the state. But in that instance, in many instances, the wealth, those families are closer than many of the wealthier families. So, when you take the pulse of America, that's one of the things you see. You see the destruction of the family, right? There, now we know that there are more divorces of people who do get married, right? More people, you're more likely to get a divorce than not. All right. So the majority of people who do go through the thing of getting married, the odds are the odds are they'll get divorced more so than stick together. Same with people who have educations and jobs are having less children or having children later. So, that's not giving the child the advantage of that youthfulness, of having youthful parents, attentive parents, parents with more time to devote to them and play with them, take them places and stuff like that. So, that's like a societal thing, and it's a change. And you can argue either way on that. There's some people that will hear talk like that and get into some like kind of thing, like either religious or feminist type of, argument. And it's like, no, I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm not talking about that. That's not the point. I'm talking about the thing in general as a societal thing. So I'm not, and I don't want to get into a then what situation. I don't want, your protest sign, you come back, I'm not trying to start an argument with you about whether a woman should raise a child. Okay. That's not what this is about. This is criticism of society and taking the pulse of America. And that's a reality. You can't argue with that. More children are in daycare than are being raised in houses. Most couples who have children in marriage are divorced, and children are split up and spend time with this one and spend time with that one. Most elderly people are warehoused in either nursing homes or long-term care facilities, right? Or ignored, or basically kind of like left alone in their own apartments and visited, and stuck watching a television or something, or hoping that hoping they have some kind of social activity or something. They're just basically abandoned. And that's a reality of society. And it's a downfall of civilization. And, there's a million reasons why you might say that happens, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't take away the fact that it's happened, and it's that a thing. Now, as far as politics as pop culture, that's been growing for some time now. Just not people have this short-term memory. I always say, I don't say it. Other people have said it. Other psychologists have proven it. People have the attention span of a goldfish. Why we have memes and sound bites and short video clips and headlines, and short tweets and things like that, because that's all the attention, that's the attention span of people today. So there are those that take advantage of that, because you could put a provocative headline up and no one's going to read the story. I mean, you could find every day a headline somewhere in some like online or print, paper, or on I look up here because I have a television on the wall that used to be a TV. Now I just have it connected. Actually, I haven't even had the thing on, but I had it connected to like a set-top box, but I don't even use it anymore. But that's why I do that when I talk about TV. I'm looking up at the TV, blank TV screen. But on TV, so there'll be a thing underneath the screen that says, make some kind of ridiculous bold statement. And they keep it there. and somebody tuning in or somebody sitting in an airport sees this thing. Excuse me. Just got, overwhelmed with carbonation. All right. It's going to switch to coffee soon, as soon as those cups come. And with the attention span of a goldfish, people just look at that and they just assume that that's it. But you could take, if you look at that Chiron or whatever they call it, these days on TV, whatever's on the bottom of the screen, you look at a meme, you look at a headline at one of these papers, they've got news, all the news apps and all this stuff. And you just like scroll quick through the news app. You'll see some of the most outrageous things in the world. But if you take the time, I guarantee this, if you actually would take the time and click on that headline or whatever, this thing, and actually read the article, you will find in more cases than not that what they say in the headline is countered, is basically disputed somewhere down in the meat of the article itself. Or by the time you get to the last paragraph, or there's an asterisk below, which will basically totally make that headline meaningless. It's just sensational. That's all it is. It's clickbait. And that, that has been creeping in for quite some time. It's nothing new. It just didn't come in the last administration, so to speak. It's been coming on us for quite a while. For at least well over a decade to 2 decades, it's been happening. So, that led to the downfall of America. So, and now, and sustaining people with this money now is, so if you're unemployed, they put people in this, very hard position to take a stand on. On one side, someone says, well, they were saying, well, it's of no fault of their own that they lost their job. It was because of the plague. Okay. So this individual deserves to have unemployment extended for over a year to where they're almost at, before they were making more than full salary. Now I think in this new bill, it's like $400. It might bring for the average person maybe up to about full salary or close to full salary. Now I was unemployed several years ago, no fault of my own, really. And I got 26 weeks of unemployment, and it was, I don't know what it was just a little over of half or whatever the percentage is of what they give you. I mean, it was such a small amount of money that I basically was I qualified for food stamps and free health care. All right. That's how low it was. And when they steal in at least the state where I was in, the first, they steal your first 2 checks or something. It's real sleazy. Like the first check, they go, oh, well, that gets paid into the system or something. That's one of those things I was talking about earlier, how they put these amendments in bills and little things. And the media doesn't cover that. They don't talk about that. That's a scandal. You're an unemployed person, and it takes you a couple of weeks till you qualify until you get your first check, and then they keep your first check. And you're like, What am I supposed to do? And you call the state and it's like, oh, call the county assistance office. They'll, yeah. So how am I supposed to buy food? Yeah, and I give you like an EBT card, electronic something transfer. I don't know what the B stands for. Benefits, electronic benefits transfer. And, but that was it, 26 weeks, half a year. Now, these people who've been unemployed this time last year, so they've been a year on basically full salary and and they'll be continuing this through July. So it'll be almost a year and a half on full to near full salary, not having to work. And they wonder why there's differences and why people object or have problems. Now, I don't care, more power to you. You know what I mean? If you could sit around for a year and a half at a full salary, and play video games and watch Netflix, so what? I'm not jealous of you, but, there's a certain part of me that says, well, I didn't get that. And other people didn't get that. It's like, what about, why don't they give me, shouldn't the government maybe give me just send me a check for another 26 weeks from when I was unemployed and everybody else prior? It's like when you forgive they talk about forgiving a portion of student loans and stuff like that. Well, I paid my student loan off. And to be quite honest, towards the end, I actually had some wages garnered to get the last part of it paid off. But it didn't matter because, they only could take such a small percentage when they garnish your wage for a student loan that it was, I was glad they were doing it because quite frankly, it was a lot easier than having to keep on top of it and send, have the stamp and an envelope and send it and do all that. You know what I mean? So, whatever. But yeah, my student loan was paid off. So if they forgive somebody's student loans or say, hey, we're going to forgive 50% of current student loans to people or something like that, well, shouldn't I get, reimbursement for the fact that I paid mine off? Do you see? Now, nobody thinks about that stuff. And that's like media. That's the kind of stuff. These are the kind of conversations that should be on the media. And that's why I'm doing this morning show, because I'm basically a show that's bringing you the kind of TV you used to have. You would have discussions. I mean, granted, it's, I'm drinking a soda. And maybe, trying to avoid belching on the air. But, it's raw and it's live. So what? This is real TV, real life, broadcasting live worldwide, millions of people. The truth, this is the truth. And so, no, but I never hear anybody talking about that. What about the parent that took a second job in order to put their child through college? Hardworking, single mom, right? That should be the end of that, hopefully. Hardworking single mom, which is basically you could find in practically every neighborhood in America these days, right? Hardworking single mom wants her child to have a better life than she did. I'm not talking about some woman who's driving a $60,000 SUV, living in some, big house in some suburban neighborhood with, all the accoutrement and, swimming pool in the backyard and all that kind of stuff. No, I'm talking about a single working mom, all right, who does anything from being working in the food service industry to the whatever remaining manufacturing jobs there might be, to sitting in an office or doing clerical work, or even some bureaucratic job. Somebody was to get up early, get her child ready, deal with the house, the laundry, all the craziness of running a house, and prepare meals for her daughter or kids, multiple kids when she comes home from work, pick them up at daycare or whatever, and has basically no time for herself. When she's off, she's got to worry about doing the laundry, doing the food shopping, right? Getting a car repaired, dealing with visiting a parent or something. In other words, the classic single mom. You know what I'm talking about. Working single mom who doesn't want her child to have to struggle the way she did. And so she works harder, right? Does things a job that she wishes she didn't want to do, puts up with stuff that she doesn't want to have to put up with. And she did this so that her son or daughter could go to college. All right. Because maybe she just was at that threshold where she was making just enough money that she didn't qualify for some kind of grant or, financial aid, or maybe her credit was too bad to, or whatever, didn't want to take out a loan, or whatever. I don't know. So she pays and gets her child through school. Or the child gets a partial student loan or something like that, but she works hard to make sure that her child has enough money so she's not what we used to call like a ragamuffin or something like that. So she can have some decent clothes and a decent computer, or a smartphone service and things like that. None of these things are cheap. There's so many people in this country, especially people in the media, they're all multimillionaires. People don't even know that. Like, even when you watch a local TV station, the real used car salespeople, whenever you see, whenever you see an anchor person, they're making six figures in local TV. All right. And anybody on national TV is making seven figures or more, So they're not representative of the people that are watching, who are making, who are just at poverty level, above poverty level, or, or working class, right? So America's a working class country, right? Most people just work. And depending on where, you could be a working class person. It depends on the region, like how much money. You can't judge people. That's why these, like I always say, figures lie and liars figure. You can't, like in a census or something where they try to talk about median incomes, or average things out and say so many people make $50,000 per year, households, this, that, they have these things they come up with. My chair's sinking. Donate a chair, one of those nice, expensive game chairs. Hey, Jack Black, are you watching? Get me a chair. Of course, maybe you disagree with my stuff I'm saying. People are afraid to talk about this stuff. This is all reality. This show's running long, but I've got into it and I want to get these issues out. So this might be a long one. So the people in the media, they should be the ones looking into this stuff. And these are the kind of stories they should be covering. And so if you're in a small rural area, okay, and you're making, I don't know, $18,000 a year, that's above the poverty line. You don't qualify for any kind of assistance or anything like that because you're above the poverty line. The poverty line, I think, in a lot of areas is around $12,000, basically $1,000 a month, something like that. And I think there's a lot of services. There's like some multiple of the above the poverty line. I think it's up to around 17,000 or something weird like that. I may be mistaken. I've looked into these things at one point. But say you're making just above that point where you don't qualify for anything, but you're just above, like you're $18,000 a year, $20,000 some a year job. Which means basically when you get your check with its deductions and all that stuff, you're barely able to just pay, keep your apartment or house, make your payments. And most likely you have a credit card that's maxed out and maybe even a loan that you're paying on in order to survive. And if you have a car, you've got a car payment and the car insurance, right? And of course, now with this crazy stuff they're doing, trying to get rid of fossil fuels, the price of gasoline is going to go up. It already has started to climb. Heating fuel's gone up. Electricity's going up. All right. So who does that hurt? Well, it doesn't hurt the multimillionaire, the people in charge of all these things. It doesn't hurt the planet, right? Because the planet, the more CO2, the better as far as the planet's concerned. All right. And the warm, we can handle warmth. That just means more crop, more forests, more growth, more oxygen, right? It has nothing to do with storms and things like that. Storms are basically cyclical and are caused by the sun and have to do with magnetic fields weakening and cycles of the sun than anything else. Anyone who doesn't understand that is basically a goldfish, is looking at headlines, is listening to talking heads, used car salespeople. The science is clear on that. All right. The number one contributor to the Earth's climate is the sun. All right. And the sun isn't also involved in magnetics. All right. Magnetic fields. And it has to do with allowing, and the Earth has weakened magnetic fields. Our poles are moving right now. The South Pole, the magnetic South Pole is no longer in Antarctica. All right. It's actually moved completely off from the South Pole. So the magnetic South Pole isn't there. And the magnetic North Pole is not the North Pole, so to speak, is like in Siberia, And in the South Atlantic, there's an anomaly where basically the magnetic field has literally like vanished. So, these are things that just nobody talks about. And then yesterday I talked about this, what used to be called the conveyor, but now it's called the AMOC, and how that's the slowest. That's the thing that keeps the circulation. It's why the temperature in Europe, like London, is warm, and northern and parts of Canada are warmer than what they should be considering their location, on the globe. So that as this thing slows down, and that's why you've been seeing colder weather in Europe and in the UK. But eventually, like winters in London will be the same as winters in Moscow. Now that's a fact, okay? It's indisputable fact. But if you listen to sound bites and you listen to somebody who comes on and says a few things, right? You believe otherwise. And you'll go out with a sign and you'll magic marker on a piece of cardboard and say, we must, do this. We must reduce CO2. We must get rid of pipelines. Yeah. Then what? Well, I'll tell you what, then what? price of gas goes up, heating fuel goes up, and people freeze to death. Who gets hurt the most? The single mom, the working class, and the elderly. All right. But what I was trying to continue with this working class thing. So someone making 20 some $1,000s in an area where they could just barely get by with the help of having a credit card and maybe a small loan. Well, there's somebody else that might be making 30, 40, or $50,000, but they're in a higher priced area, by birth, because that's where their job is, for whatever reason. Okay. Well, many of those people themselves, that's why they've cropped off, they're trying to cut down this $1,400. If we're ever going to get that $1,400, it's supposedly in Congress or in the Senate. Well, Congress is part of this. Senate's part of Congress. But if we're ever going to get it, I think they capped it at somewhere around 7 people who make 70,000 or 80,000. More than that aren't going to get it. And that basically supports what my argument is. I agree with that. But the idea is that you could be making whatever you make, your gross annual salary is dependent upon the cost of living in your particular area. So if you're living in an area like I am, and here, the prices vary. I just happen to find I'm in a neighborhood that had a lot of houses that were available, semi fixer-uppers, though quite frankly, I moved right in this house and lived. In other words, I just had the water turned on, the gas turned on, and stuff like that. Now, since I've been here, I've done upgrades because it's an older house. Right. So semi fixer upper. I still have a bad roof. Right. But like I said, but there are places you can find inexpensive houses in just most areas, and that aren't necessarily what you would call like in the ghetto, right? Inner city, gangland or something. That's not the situation here. This is just a neighborhood on the outskirts of town, an older house, like I say, semi fixer upper, but was move-in ready. And the changes I made to it were the upgrades I've made to it over the past 5 or 6 years since I've been here have been things I've done because of improvements I wanted to make. So in where I am, in my current lifestyle, and this was an intentional thing. You have to remember, there were times in my life where I lived in a penthouse in New York. I lived in a Malibu, house overlooking the Pacific Ocean. All right. I lived in Capitol Hill townhouse. I lived in a Towers Center City building in Philadelphia. Right. And had very good jobs in, being the boss and traveled around the world. But I made a conscious decision, about what started hitting my, getting into my consciousness about 10 years ago. But I did it about 5 or 6 years ago. I forget how long. I think it's about that long since I've been here. That I wanted to get to a point where I was free of worrying about anything financial income, and I wanted to be independent. I didn't want to rent an apartment. I didn't want to have to deal with landlords and neighbors, somebody next door, or any of that stuff. And I was lucky enough to find this place. And like I said yesterday and before, I found it online. I never even entered this place before until I settled with, until I basically settled was at settlement. When you're purchasing a place, you have this settlement meeting where you pass your down payment check, and then you get the key and you sign papers and all that nonsense. Your mortgage, whatever. Came here, opened it up. Okay. In the car, I had a futon rolled up, my computer, and I'd already had the internet, water, and electric turned on because you can do all that stuff online now. And that night after settlement, I slept in the front room on a futon. I had internet, was watching stuff, videos, entertainment, took a shower the next morning in my own house. And then the movers, and had the movers scheduled like within the next day or two to bring the stuff out of my apartment down. And I was in, planning. But now someone who lives in, a major market, like what they would call a top 10 market, top 10, top 20 market, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, LA, whatever. Or even suburbs outside of those places, North Jersey, suburbs outside of Philadelphia, these kinds of places. Your cost of living there, rents / mortgages, maybe anywhere from 1,000, 2,000 and up, depending on, like I say, depending on the city. And, well, I mean, if you have a $2,000 a month rent or mortgage, that's $24,000 a year. So you take that same single mom that's living in a place that's only making $24,000. Well, it's not even reality, because you have all your other expenses. So that person has to make, say, $40,000 minimum to break even, kind of, maybe even 50. And it goes up. So that's why, it all depends on where the person is. So you might hear, well, somebody's making $60,000. Well, if they're making $60,000 where I am, where you could live for under $1,000 a month, get by, you're not going to live well. I mean, in the sense of having like extravagance. But, my expenses are under $1,000 a month because I've orchestrated it that way. So I could have freedom to do what I want to do. So yeah, if I had an income of $60,000 a year in a place that cost me less than $1,000 a year, I mean, it's a month, which would be, $12,000 a year. I'd have all that extra money, so I'd be driving an SUV, and I'd have that, and I'd have this, and I'd be able to do that. But that's not the way it is. So sometimes that person who's making $50,000 or $60,000 is basically house poor, and is barely getting by, especially if they may have a kid or two. So, this is, take the pulse of America is what I'm getting at. And so most people are struggling in that regard. And when you live in a corporatocracy, when that's what America's become, I'm sorry this show's running on long. I do hope that people stay tuned and listen to this, or will have fast forwarded to it. But when you get to that idea that most people are just trying to get by, just to live their life, and the worst thing in life is to be a slave to a job and to have this work, eat, sleep existence. I mean, that's no way to live. That's dehumanization, right? You're nothing but cattle at that point. Like I say, cattle on a tax farm, or, not even a consumer farm, because at that point you're a cattle on their tax farm. Some people are cattle on a tax/consumer farm because they're slaves to having to buy all these things, right? Some people are their own worst enemies, and so I'm not those people. I'm not really including in this discussion, but it's a reality. And if you want to take the pulse of America, there are those people that watch that TV that I keep pointing up to, and they keep buying the new cars. They keep buying the new refrigerators that have the ice thing in the front and the filtered water there. They buy the washer and dryer set that costs, $2,000. Whereas I go and I buy the $200 washer. You see? I mean, I could go on endlessly like that. Like, when I first was getting my place and I looking at first, I needed to get a washer and a dryer. And you go into one of those box stores and you're looking, and right there in the front of the aisle, you see these things. And they're the ones you always see in commercials, like the commercials for laundry detergent and stuff. You always see these things, and you see them in people in YouTube channels too. We'll maybe get into that too. Take the pulse of America. All these YouTube wealthy people that just like flaunt their stuff. I don't know how they keep their viewers, because I just tune out. I have no interest anymore. Hey, we just bought a new thing. Like it's even the title of their episode. We bought a new such and such. We bought a new such and such. We bought a new this. We bought a new that. Right? And I'm like, come on, man. You're just throwing it, see that one. Come on, man. Good old Dementia Joe. And it's like, what, I'm not going to watch, so in other words, you got rich from people like me watching your channel. And now you're throwing it in these people's face. And these people have this cult of personality, because it's not just with politicians. And they look up to these people, and they send them presents and stuff like that. And they have no idea that these people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, off of YouTube. I make nothing off of YouTube. Zero. Absolutely zero. Nobody's bought a shirt yet. Nobody bought a book yet. And these things are, good things, helpful things, like my greatsolarstuff.com. I'm trying to help you. If people would have bought that stuff, Texans in that power outage and stuff, they would have been in a much better situation. But nobody cares. They just don't care. So, yeah, I have no sympathy for that for the individual that gets caught up in consumerism and buys, he goes into a box store and pays $1,500 for a washer, right? When you just go further down the aisle and you'll find one for, maybe I don't know, probably at this point, probably 300's the cheapest one you could get. So $1,300 versus $300, save $1,000, right? And if you're, and you wonder why your credit card, payments are killing you and why creditors are calling on you. Okay, so I have no sympathy for that type of person. But that's a reality of America. But the biggest threat that what really toppled this country, and like I say, it's gone forever. America is, like I say, when Rome fell, you had Italy. When the United States of America fell, you ended up with America, the states. And how it's all going to settle out, these territories with governors, who have already seemed to have assumed power beyond, what you would expect. They're, in other words, they're already acting, kind of like authoritarians. You saw that in, in recent months and over last year, particularly in places like New York, Wisconsin, and even down in Texas and Florida, California, definitely. I mean, they tried to recall that. They got enough votes to recall that guy. Whether or not that happens or not, it's questionable. But so you see, that's already happening. In other words, the Constitution, the founding of this documents of this country have already been trampled on. The courts aren't supporting them. The courts have become politicized. Everything's politicized. But the politicians are are pretty much powerless now. And so like this thing just keeps popping up. It's like YouTube trying to like mess with me. And so when you get out of the politics of pop culture and you see that all that's left is humanity. And that's what you have to hang on to. So I could go on and on and on, but I think I've given you enough stuff to think about, that nobody else is really talking about, and that the media, excuse me, sorry, just clearing my throat. It's just hard to talk for an hour and 46 minutes at now it's 6:30 in the morning. I've been talking since 4:44, I think. But that's what I'm trying to say. So it's a matter of the struggling person, the working person, people who don't want to work versus people who work hard and barely get by. People obsessed with consumerism, getting themselves caught up in debt to keep up with the so-called Joneses. That phrase doesn't make sense to maybe some new people, but to keep up with whoever the trendsetters are, that kind of thing, the influencers, to live like the influencers. Some of these people on Instagram and stuff like that, these influencers, they're making 6 figures, 7 figures. YouTubers are making 6 figures, 7 figures. And the average person is looking and they want to live that life, but the only way they can live that life is if they get in debt. And then that's what it also foments all this violence. And that's why when you see these riots and they turn into looting and all of this kind of stuff, and these demands for everyone has a demand for something, because the poor, everyone seems to have a cell phone now, or a smartphone, is watching the internet and is on these platforms, and they see all this wealth everywhere. So they don't see people like me saying, well, I got a garden. I bought a cheap house and I got a garden in the backyard, which, and I eat out of that garden for pretty much more than half the year. Supplies my food. I got a leaky roof and I don't have a car. I don't drive a car because why? All I would be using it is a couple of times a month. So why should I have a car payment or maintenance and gas for a car insurance and all that goes with it? Well, for something that I could just, get a car rental for a day or use a car service, Uber or whatever. You don't see people like that talking. So instead, what happens is people see this lifestyles of the rich and famous, of the influencers, of the YouTubers, of the people on TV, of the reporters, the news readers, right? The basic car salesman is what they are. The cult of personality, the political class, the ruling class. And for some reason, they have a cult of personality about those people. Like they look up to them, right? Like, like Meghan Markle. Like to be a princess, it must be so great. It's the year 2021. Princess? Come on, give me a break. There's no such, who cares? Queen? It's the year 2021. It's not the year like 1512 or something. Kings, queens, princes, and princesses. It's fairy tales for little girls, right? But people still caught up in that stuff. You watch these things they've got on Netflix and all these movies, and they're period pieces that all about this, because that's this whole movement that the corporatocracy is trying to throw people into, this kind of neo-feudalism, as if, that whole idea, you will own nothing. This actually came out of the World Economic Forum. They have a promotional commercial that's making the rounds, that's being paid for, produced, and is being aired, showing some smiling face goofball, soy boy. You will own nothing and you will be happy. And, and the question is, well, who's going to own everything then? Well, the World Economic Forum, the people from the Davos set, right? So the Great Reset, neo-feudalism. And so that's why they throw all this stuff. Who do you think sponsors all these things, these productions? This is all propaganda from the corporatocracy, who are the puppeteers of everything. Remember, puppeteers, corporatocracy at the top. Big pharma, big, big tech, big data, military industrial complex, big ag, right? All the big, Wall Street, the central banking system, financial networks. That's the corporatocracy, the Davos set, World Economic Forum, Great Reset. They're all pulling the strings. Below them are the bureaucrats. And like I said yesterday, and actually a couple days now, these bureaucrats, and that includes the alphabet agencies, the spy agencies and people like that, but also just the bureaucrats, government bureaucrats. Below them now are the elected politicians. See, that the bureaucrats took over the politicians over the past couple of years, right? So politicians now are just total marionettes. That's why you have a guy like Biden in there. The man, don't even try to defend it. The man has dementia, right? And he's yet to even do can't even do a press conference. All right. They've been pushing off the State of the Union and stuff like that. The man has lost his mind. So until they can get, I guess they're working hard at it, but until he gets another blood transfusion and some serious dopamine type of actual drugs in his system where they can give him clarity for about 30 to 45 minutes. I think they've been able to do that on a couple of occasions. Problem is the brain doesn't get used to those drugs, and they don't last as long every time you do it. Right? It's like anything else. People build up a resistance to it. But they might be able to pull that off one more time, right? Give them some, they do these blood transfusions with blood from like 18, 19-year-olds. And, so he's got, infused with like, all this youthful blood in his system. And then they inject him with, various things on, almost like speed, but, we're talking about some of the best doctors in the world. All right. Putting together some drug cocktail. Right. And then they'll march him out and he'll be like, yeah. And, and they can do that, but they can only do that so many times before, the body just, it won't take that, you can't take it. And I think that's why you only see that, you see those moments of clarity, only every so many, like 3 weeks or something like that. So I'm sure they'll pull another one off, but I don't think he'll go beyond that. But that's the corporatocracy just giving us the finger, like I said the other day. They're just putting it in our face and saying, see, these guys are puppets. So, here we'll put a guy in here who he's mindless. He's lost his mind. Right. And the bureaucrats, the problem is the bureaucrats and the spy agencies, which I was talking about the other day, the so-called who think they're in charge, right? Because they're the career bureaucrats, right? Oh, these politicians, they come in every 6 or 8 years. They change like the weather. We've been here for, 20 years. We know better. Well, this is our country. Well, we know what's right, and they ignore it. And even when the politicians pull them up at hearings and stuff, they just lie to them and all that stuff. And they don't listen. They don't pay attention to them, or they delay. Right? If they're ordered to do something, they just gets caught up in the bureaucracy, and it's like they used to call it red tape, but it really is defiance, delays, and defiance. So they just put it through slow mo. And what I've been trying to tell and speak out to the bureaucrats and the spy agencies, intel agencies, but spy agencies, intelligence, big data, and big tech, and remember, at DARPA, you partnered with the corporatocracy, so everything that you have or think you have they have and has been developed in partnership with them. And what you don't understand, the average person in this, socioeconomic, geopolitical, world that we live in, is that the Davos set, the corporatocracy, because a lot of these bureaucrats, they don't want to come to grips with it, is that there are secrets and there are things passed down from generations to generations and technologies that are really fitting of what you would expect for the year 2021, not the technologies that the average person sees and thinks, oh, that's nice. I think my smartphones are cool. You should see this cool app I got, right? Or this new VR headset's really wild. Or this version of AI, this GPT-3 is really outrageous, man. We're heading towards this, and Elon Musk is warning it's going to take over the world. It's like, nah, the technology that really exists is far beyond that. Company like Apple, all right, and Alphabet, right, and even AWS, who's housing the CIA's data, okay, that it's the bureaucrats need to worry about the corporatocracy. They've already defeated the politicians. They're nobody, and they haven't been anybody for the longest time. The House of Representatives and the Senate have always been pretty much controlled, by the corporatocracy through lobbyists and all that sort of thing. That's who've been writing the bills, and everything for years. But now with the corporatocracy, with the advent of big tech, all right, big pharma, big ag, and the modern military industrial complex, which is AI and robotics and drones and all that kind of stuff, is that they're in charge of the world, and they're in charge of this country. Western civilization fell several years ago. I mean, the last nail in the coffin was several years ago. All right. The United States is fallen. All right. And it's not coming back. This empire's gone. And what exists is we're seeing a transition into a totalitarian state, totalitarian world, global governance, corporatocracy. And that's it. And that's the next, that's the thing that we're living through now. And what you have to do is be a guy like me who's removed enough from them that they have the least amount of influence on me. So I don't care what they do. And if they cut me off of this thing, so be it. I've got music to listen to, I don't even need the internet. And quite frankly, as soon as I get my $1,400, I'm going to greatsolarstuff.com, my website, and I'm going to get myself one of these things and a couple of those solar panels. Wherever this goes. So it's a 2-hour show. This would be the longest since one of my my 5-hour show. I actually had a 6-hour show, but that one had to be taken down because of copyright strikes, because I played some music, which I want to get into that, whatever their rationale on that was. So all I could say is Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a very good morning. And, you know, it's coming up on the weekend. Well, it is the weekend now. Today's Friday. So have a great weekend. I'll probably be here. I mean, this is kind of the thing I do these days. So, you know, good luck. And I hope, you know, there's something you can take away from these 2 hours, because there was a lot of stuff there, you know, and, you know, think about it and improve your life in a sense of being free. And as I said before, remember, you have 5 senses and you have creativity, and you're living in a 3D world, and you have the ability to do the things. And the technocrats, the transhumanists, and the corporatocracy, they're just playing on you. Your senses are yours unless you surrender them to them. So forget about the cult of personality. Forget about the politics, you know, as pop culture. All right. Pay no attention to the used car salesman on TV, because that's all they are. And don't get caught up in this with these internet people and these stories, these fake headlines, or these clickbait, and these people that are making all kinds of money, and you know, influencers. You know, be your own person. Be your own person. You know, that's what life's all about. Anyway, have a great day, great weekend, peace. Take care.